Welcome to Newsday. Reporting live from Singapore, I'm Karishma Vaswani. The headlines. As President Zelensky returns to Ukraine, we get the latest update from the front line.
For all the sophisticated weaponry and all the ammunition, this is what it comes down to in the end. Men, mud, and an enemy which is within rifle range.
The US is in for the coldest Christmas in 4 decades as a major winter storm sweeps the country. Heated scenes in the Scottish Parliament as controversial legislation is passed, making it easier for people to change their legal gender. And we take a journey through David Hockney's imagination as he describes his new immersive exhibition.
Live from our studio in Singapore. This is BBC News. It's Newsday.
Hello and welcome to the programme. The Kremlin has strongly criticised President Zelensky's visit to Washington, accusing the US of fighting an indirect war against it. In a speech, President Putin said a new Patriot missile defence system would simply prolong the war and that Russia would find an antidote. The Ukrainian leader is now back in Ukraine, and 10 months on since the start of the conflict, Ukrainian forces have regained some areas taken by Russia, but people across the country are without power because of Russian aerial attacks, and some are without family members killed in the conflict. The BBC has been following one soldier, Lieutenant Eugene Gramadsky, as he fights to defend his country at great personal cost. Our correspondent, Quentin Somerville, and camera journalist Darren Conway joined him at an undisclosed location near Kupiansk in the country's east, where fighting continues amid appalling winter conditions.
When the enemy is on your doorstep, sacrifices must be made. This is home for a platoon from Ukraine's 92nd Brigade. They've a few small rooms in an abandoned house. They're crammed in tight. Meals are eaten standing up. Not that Senior Lieutenant Eugene Gramadsky gets to spend much time here. He's had only 2 hours sleep, but again needs to head out to the front. There's a Russian counterattack underway. This war has shaken the world and Ukraine, but the 22-year-old lieutenant hasn't wavered. He's been fighting since the war's very beginning. When his army veteran father was killed on the first day of the invasion, he didn't falter. This was 9 months ago when I first met Eugene, at the start of a conflict that would transform him and his country. He just recently graduated. He and Ukraine were ill-prepared. Today, Eugene and his country bear the scars of lessons learned. There have been a lot of casualties in this war. You've lost a lot of people. Do you fear death?
The person who is not afraid is already dead. If you meet death with open arms, it will avoid you because death loves the brave. That's why I don't think about death. I only think about life, the lives of my comrades and the lives of those in my unit.
These are the men who have Eugene's back, who stand at the ready in this winter wasteland, exposed to Russian firepower and the elements. They're trying to halt a Russian breakthrough. There's hardly any cover here, so they move as fast as the cold allows, knowing that Russian guns will soon find them.
The enemy's positions are being hit by fire. They're trying to advance, but our artillery is helping our infantry with a counteroffensive. And we will keep fighting until the end. It's our land. It's our blood.
Time is up. The Russians are targeting them. Let's go there. Their aim for now is off, but it's closing in. artillery strikes a nearby tree line. Eugene's comrades hit the trenches. There's fierce fighting up ahead. The Ukrainians have taken a lot of ground here. But for all the sophisticated weaponry and all the ammunition, this is what it comes down to in the end. Men, mud, and an enemy which is within rifle range. Ukraine is still advancing here, but winter is coming, and the next few months are going to be a slow, hard grind. But in these conditions, it's tough maintaining momentum. When Ukrainian soil turns into soup, regaining every step of territory is a slog.
We need to work on that village over there.
It's one of only a couple of dozen villages still in Russian control in Kharkiv region. Every day is a battle for the upper hand. The road they must travel is dangerous, pitted with Russian hits and misses. In the freezing cold, everything is an effort. They've lost men on this route. And the bitterest months still lie ahead here. Movement is spotted.
A little bit to the right, on the corner over there, right behind the hangar.
These are the daily battles the men face. Today, some ground is won, but tomorrow it may be lost. And so it repeats as the casualties mount on both sides.
To be honest, there were many comrades who died, who I knew personally. They were ideological people who kept moving forward, who never stopped. But it's a war, so there is no time to be sad.
Some 13,000 soldiers have already died defending Ukraine. And away from the front, millions more will spend a freezing winter in darkness because of Russian missile attacks. And this Christmas, it will be candles for the fallen that light the homes of Ukrainians. Natalia had two heroes in her life. Her first, her husband. He was killed on the first day of the war as he defended the city.
Can you describe your husband to us? What kind of a man was he?
He was a patriot, a real patriot of our country. He was a Ukrainian.
And Natalia's trials are far from over. Her other hero is her only child. She's Eugene's mother. The young lieutenant fighting at the front, seen here with Oleg, his father, who died in battle. She has given everything for Ukraine.
9 months into this war, do you have a message for other Ukrainian mothers?
I want to wish them to always believe that everything will be okay with our children and to always wait for them. Mother's love is a big power. We need to believe that everything will be fine. Surely.
Quentin Somerville, BBC News, Kharkiv.
Well, to the United States now, and forecasters say a major winter storm, which is sweeping the country this week, may bring the coldest Christmas in 4 decades to part of the US. There has already been major snowfall in many areas, and more than 90 million people in 37 states are set to experience sub-zero temperatures, including places as far south as Texas. Tom Brada reports.
A fierce winter storm is sweeping across the United States. More than 100 million people are under winter weather alerts, with warnings of ice, snow and freezing winds. At a White House briefing, President Biden called for caution.
This is really a very serious weather alert here. And it goes from Oklahoma all the way to Wyoming and Wyoming to Maine. It's not like a snow day, you know, when you're a kid. This is serious stuff.
Meteorologists say the winter storm could become a bomb cyclone, an unofficial term for a certain type of powerful storm which rapidly builds in strength. Heavy snowfall and strong winds are expected to cause damage and power outages in the Midwest and Canada. And travel chaos is expected as people head home for Christmas, with thousands of flights already cancelled.
It's been a little crazy. I got here early to make sure I got on my flight. I was doing Frontier, and the app never notified me, but the flight got canceled. So I was sitting there an extra hour, and then security told me it got canceled. So when I came here, then my other flight from Frontier got canceled.
The National Weather Service has warned temperatures could dip below minus 45 degrees Celsius by the end of the week in some parts of the country. With Christmas fast approaching, millions of Americans will hope the ferocious cold won't ruin their festive plans. Tom Brada, BBC News.
Well, I've been speaking to Jaden Pappenheim from Live Storm Chasers. He's in South Bend, Indiana, and he's been telling me about the situation on the ground there.
I'm in South Bend, Indiana right now, currently under a blizzard warning, and snow has started to fall here in the last couple hours. About 4 o'clock is when these heavier snow bands started to move into the area, and conditions are already worsening by the minute out here. Have actually already noted a car crash about a block away from my hotel, so things are getting, you know, basically going from 0 to 100 out here across portions of the Midwest, and really much of the U.S. Is under the gun for this, you know, big winter snowstorm.
Jaden, what are authorities saying about how bad it might get over the next couple of days, particularly over the Christmas period, you know, at a time when loved ones and families try and travel and get together?
Yeah, you know, it could get really bad, especially holiday travel. You know, that's a big story. You know, in particular, my area specifically could see anywhere from 6 to 12 inches with 55-mile-an-hour gusts. And, you know, that creates big problems, especially when you have a huge influx of travel along the major interstates through cities. And just slightly to my east, about 5 hours, Buffalo, New York through Sunday could experience 1 to 3 feet of impactful snow, 65 to 75-mile-an-hour winds. And I mean, this is a big deal. Not only that, the Arctic blast that has moved through much of the region, you know, Malta, Montana, yesterday, a small town got to negative 72 degrees Fahrenheit, and that's with wind chill. So very impactful system. Anybody that's traveling through the holiday period here in the U.S., definitely, you know, stay warm, have your emergency gear in your car in case you get stranded.
Yeah, we're just seeing some images of what the situation is there right now. In your time monitoring the weather, Jaden, how bad is this in comparison to what you've seen before?
To what I've seen before in my young storm chasing career, you know, I think this is just the start. Who knows what we could see out of this? Definitely could be, you know, I have no problem calling this the start of a historic event.
Right. Jaden, how much pressure do you think ambulance services and emergency services have been under? And what are they saying about how people should keep safe at this time?
They're under a lot of pressure right now. Big workload. You know, you can only have, I guess, so many emergency crews at one time. And then what starts happening is you get all these car crashes that start stacking up, and then that pulls resources away from your normal house calls and stuff like that. So I think at this time, especially in the heavy blizzard conditions, emergency responders, first responders definitely have a lot of pressure on them, you know, to keep everything in working order and make sure they can get to people safely.
Jaden Pappenheim there from Live Storm Chasers speaking to us a little earlier. And if you want to get in touch with me about any of the stories that you've seen so far on Newsday, that situation in the United States with the weather, for instance, I'm at BBC Karishma on Twitter. I'm looking forward to hearing from you. You're watching Newsday on the BBC. Still to come on the programme, we take a journey through David Hockney's imagination as he describes his new immersive exhibition.
The world of music's been paying tribute to George Michael, who's died from suspected heart failure at the age of 53. He sold well over 100 million albums in a career spanning more than 3 decades.
The United States troops have been trying to overthrow the dictatorship of General Manuel Noriega. The Pentagon said it's failed in its principal objective, to capture Noriega and take him to the United States to face drugs charges.
The hammer and sickle was hastily taken away. In its place, the Russian flag was hoisted over what is now no longer the Soviet Union, but the Commonwealth of Independent States.
Day broke slowly over Lockerbie, over the cockpit of Pan Am's Maid of the Seas, nose down in the soft earth. You could see what happens when a plane 8 stories high, a football pitch wide, falls from 30,000 feet.
Christmas has returned to Albania after a communist ban lasting more than 20 years. Thousands went to midnight mass in the town of Shkodra, where there were anti-communist riots 10 days ago.
This is Newsday on the BBC. I'm Karishma Vaswani in Singapore. Our headlines for you today. As President Zelensky returns to Ukraine, we get the latest update from the front line. The US is in for the coldest Christmas in 4 decades as a major winter storm sweeps the country. The Scottish Parliament has passed controversial legislation which makes it easier for people to legally change gender. They'll no longer have to get a medical diagnosis before being allowed what's called a gender recognition certificate. The vote was greeted with cheers in the chamber from supporters of the bill and cries of shame on you from opponents. Here's our Scotland editor, James Cook.
For years, this nation has been divided politically. Now there's a social split too, on that hottest of topics, gender. Not everyone in Scotland is invested in this debate, but those who are tend to be fired up. And so, here at Holyrood this afternoon, there was both delight and disgust.
And the Gender Recognition Reform Scotland Bill is passed. Thank you. The next...
That followed days of delay and debate, not least about people born male accessing female-only spaces.
I will do everything I can to protect women's rights for as long as I live. But I also think it's an important part of my responsibility to make life a little bit easier for stigmatised minorities in our country.
While there may be a majority in this chamber later today to support this legislation, a majority of the public oppose the bill, including most SNP, Labour and Liberal Democrat voters. This bill reduces women's rights and potentially risks women's safety.
But what is the new process for changing gender in Scotland? Well, it will be faster. Instead of living for 24 months in your new gender before applying, adults will now have to wait only 3 months. Younger people will also be able to apply. The age limit drops from 18 to 16, although the process will be slower for this group. And it will be easier because the requirement for medical reports to back up an application is being dropped. But will Holyrood have the final say? The UK government says it's considering whether it can block the legislation or challenge it in court. If it does, expect yet another row. Viewed from afar, some of history's great social upheavals look much less contentious. Votes for women, gay rights. Supporters of this change say that's going to happen here, that controversy will fade over time. But opponents say it will intensify as the impact of this new law becomes clear. Either way, perspective often shifts with distance. James Cook, BBC News, Edinburgh.
Well, Spanish lawmakers in the lower house have also passed a transgender rights bill allowing anyone 16 and over to change gender on their ID card. It's legislation that has divided Spain's left-wing government and its feminist movement. The bill now moves to the Senate, where, if left unchanged, as expected, it will become law within weeks. The move will make Spain one of the world's few countries to allow transgender people to change their status with a symbol declaration. Well, let's take a look now at some of the other stories that are making headlines today, starting with the fact that the founder of the collapsed cryptocurrency exchange FTX has been released by a New York court after agreeing bail set at $250 million. Sam Bankman-Fried will also have to stay at his parents' home in California and surrender his passport while awaiting trial on fraud and money laundering charges. Mr. Bankman-Fried is accused of stealing billions of dollars from FTX to prop up another of his businesses. A Belgian court has told the Greek politician at the centre of a corruption scandal in the European Parliament that she must remain in custody for another month. Eva Kaili was stripped of her role as Vice President of the Parliament over the case earlier this month. She denies accepting bribes from Qatar. Muslim countries, including Saudi Arabia and Iran, have criticised the decision by Afghanistan's Taliban government to bar women from attending university. The Saudis said Afghanistan should abide by Islamic principles regarding women's rights. The US Senate has approved a huge government spending program worth nearly $1.7 trillion. It includes another $45 billion of support for Ukraine. The House of Representatives has yet to vote on the bill. The White House says North Korea has delivered rockets and missiles to the Wagner Group, a private Russian military company based in St. Petersburg. It's estimated that around 50,000 Wagner Group soldiers are fighting in Ukraine under independent command from the Russian military. North Korea have denied the reports. Ambulance workers in parts of England will head out on strike again for 2 days next month over a pay dispute. This comes after yesterday's industrial action, which lasted for 12 hours. Only the most serious emergency calls were dealt with, and members of the military were called in to help in some areas. He's one of the most popular and influential artists of our time, and now David Hockney, Yorkshire-born and well into his 80s, is pushing the boundaries once again of what's possible in art. Our culture editor, Katie Razzle, has been to meet him.
David Hockney gets a first glimpse of his new show.
Colour is a joyful thing. I want my art to be joyful.
We're on an immersive journey as the final tweaks are underway with one of Britain's best-loved artists.
Water is a surface that's elusive in a way. All the patterns that you see on it are just on the surface.
The show's called Bigger and Closer, Not Smaller and Further Away. 60 years of his life and art.
Have you just always been better at looking than the rest of us?
I do look closely at things. I can look at a puddle and get pleasure out of them. Most people think it's just raining, don't they?
Hockney's been painting on his iPad in recent years, most famously the arrival of spring in his home in Normandy. This year, we discovered he was back painting on canvas when this self-portrait was revealed, and there's much more work still unseen.
I've been doing paintings.
How many?
Well, about 40. I painted my cook, the man who comes to do my feet, because he's a bit of a dandy.
Have you painted Harry Styles? Is that right?
Yes.
In person?
Yes.
He came to see you?
Oh, yeah. I mean, all the paintings are done from life. He wanted me to paint him. He had a few little outfits. I chose this yellow sweater.
Yellow is a Hockney favourite.
How many pairs of Crocs have you got?
Well, I've only got one, actually.
These are the only shoes he wears now, he says, deemed beautifully chosen by King Charles when they met, a rare outing for Hockney.
I'm usually drawing or painting, yeah. I mean, it's all I want to do now. I mean, I'm 85. How much longer do I have? I'm a smoker. But I might have 5 years, I don't know. Yeah, I've had a very, very good life. I mean, I say I live in the now. It's the now that's eternal, isn't it?
Eternal too, Hockney's joyful art. Katie Razzle, BBC News.
Really remarkable stuff there, and 3 years in the making. Really looks like an immersive experience indeed, doesn't it? Just wish that we would all get a chance to have a look. But for now, I want to tell you the fact that it is the last programme of the year. It's the final Newsday of 2022. Can you quite believe it? I really can't. The year has just whizzed past, hasn't it? And just to say to all of our wonderful viewers who tune in to this programme, wherever you may be watching from, all over the world, on behalf of everyone here at the Newsday team, I want to wish you a very Merry Christmas for all of those celebrating, and a happy holiday season to all of you. Stay safe, stay well, and have a little fun if you're able to. I'll see you in 2023. Until then, a very happy new year. Thanks for watching.